Game Wardens and Houndsmen. What a crazy relationship that can be at times. Both sides sitting back, pointing fingers at the other side. And I know because I was one, and I still am a houndsman. So I've seen both sides of this whole love affair that we've had with Game Wardens versus Houndsmen. I've seen houndsmen who did not want to meet me at night, and I've also seen coon hunters that were real happy to see me when landowners were giving them a hard time or they had a dog shot, things like that. But the point of this whole podcast is Travis Legler reached out to me and said, hey, man, let's talk about this. Let's talk about why there is such a divide between game wardens and houndsmen. Why do game wardens look at houndsmen as the bad guy all the time? Why do houndsmen think that every game warden is out there to get them all the time? I'm glad he reached out to me because there's one thing I hate. I think it's ignorant for us to paint any group with a broad brush. I used to tell my coworkers that, and now I still tell houndsmen that as well. Travis comes originally from Prescott, Arizona, moved up into the Kanab in the Northern Strip area and hunts that area, and he's recorded some cool videos. We're going to tell those stories about some video lion capture work that he caught on camera. But we're just going to break this whole thing down and talk about dogs, talk about lion hunting, and talking about game wardens chasing houndsmen and houndsmen running from game wardens. This one ought to be fun, folks. And I can tell you someplace else you can have a lot of fun. You can go over to houndsmanxp.com. That's our website. And join us on Patreon. Seth is dropping all kinds of tailgate talks, videos, stories. There's all kinds of stuff that's exclusive to our Patreon membership. And when you join us on Patreon at the $12 level, you're going to get a lot of cool stuff. You're going to get a membership to Sportsman's Alliance. You're going to get discount codes. You're going to have access to all our stuff. I mean, anybody that joins us over there is going to get their money back pretty quick. If you hit one of our monthly drawings or semi-annual or annual drawings, then you'll make your money back easily. So we have drawings every month. It's all right there on Patreon. The other thing that's over there is our shop. And we're adding all kinds of cool stuff to our shop. If it's not up there today, it's going to be up there in the next couple of days. We are Elite Nutrition dealers, okay? Elite Nutrition, we did a podcast with them a few weeks ago. I've been using the products steadily now for the last month. I really doubled down on the Essential Dog. It's probably been 2 months. And the improvements I'm seeing in the overall body condition, the health of my dogs is unbelievable. I'm skeptical. I really drilled the people at Elite Nutrition when we did the podcast with them. So I put it to the test, and it's working for me and my dogs. I had to cut Tough back. His collar was getting tight. He was swelling up, getting fat. You just can't have a fat terrier. And, I mean, that dude's – we hunt every day. He's moving every day. So we just jumped in with both feet and said, hey, we're going to carry this stuff on our website. So if you're looking for Elite Nutrition products, you can go right to houndsmanxp.com and order right from there, and it'll get shipped right to your door. One last thing, and then we'll jump into this interview with Travis Legler. Houndsman XP just sent a check out to Colorado to CRWM, and that money was generated from you. And I want to tell all of you that have taken advantage and purchased a Join or Die sweatshirt or a t-shirt from our Join or Die collection in our shop that your money is on its way or should be in Colorado by now. It's not too late to get involved. It's time for us to step up, get in this fight. Some of you have already done that. Others, you need to get on board, and you can do it with a cool sweatshirt, cool design, Join or Die, and be proud of who you are. Let's get into this episode with Travis. A lot of good stories being told here, a lot of hunting stories, a lot of game warden stories. I think you're going to enjoy it. This one's a box shaker. It's time to get the tailgate down. It's time to dump the box. Your photo there, or your backdrop there, like you really out in the desert in the Kanab right now and sitting under a lime tree, Travis?
No, not right this second. I wish.
Is that, I assume that's one of the lions you've treed.
Yes, sir.
You had some family out not too long ago, and you guys did some lion hunting. You guys doing good?
Let me tell you a little wild story. I mean, not quite as wild as the video, but my nephew was up. He's 10 years old, and in Arizona, you can start hunting at 10 years old. So he's been begging to go lion hunting, and not so much begging me because I'll take him anytime he wants to go, but begging his dad to bring him up here to go.
Yeah.
So they came up. My buddy from Missouri came out, brought me another mule, and he drove my other Toyota. So we had, and then there's a firefighter out of Phoenix that's just getting into hounds. He's got 2 pups, and he came up. So we had quite the conglomeration of folks. We were out there running around, but we found several old tracks, and and some tracks in the mud and snow and this and that and the other. And on it was Sunday, the firefighter, he gets a hold of me on the radio. He says, "Hey," "I think I found a drag mark from a kill."
No
and
kidding.
I says, "All right." Yeah. So I head up there. Well, we get out there, and I think he had probably scared the lion. And this is like 3:00 in the afternoon, 3:30 in the afternoon. I think the lion had just made that kill, because the lion could have drug it to the west, and it would have been down into some nice trees and things like that. But instead, the lion drug it straight off a cliff, like about a 30-foot drop down into the bottom. So we're standing up there on this cliff face, looking around, trying to find that lion, or the kill anyway, to see. Because I was like, I don't want to put any dogs down there. That's some gnarly stuff, and it's the next cliff down's like 300 feet down.
Shoot.
And so we're glassing and looking, and I'm like, that lion's right there. And they're like, what? I says, laying right there by the rock. And that lion was laying there next to the rock. While we're watching that one, another lion comes out around the corner. So it was a male and a female together.
No kidding.
And so he sat there and watched the whole thing. And my nephew, he's like, what do we do? And I says, well, I ain't putting no dogs down there. But I said, you might as well shoot that thing. That's a pretty good sized lion. And he's like, well, all I have is my 357 lever action. I said, well, I got an AR in the truck. I said, go get it. It's got a scope on it. So he shoots this lion. It's about 150 yards away. Shoots this lion. I pull my truck up to the edge and hook up about 150 feet of tow straps and ropes. And we drop down off that edge and go get that lion. Well, we thought it was the tom, and the other lion, because it looked like a smaller one, was probably the female. Well, this turned out to be a 9-year-old plus sterile female. Her canine teeth were only about 1/4 to 1/2 inch long. They were worn down so bad. And the game wardens and the biologist said she was probably sterile. So we had one happy young 10-year-old.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. So how far was that drop off when you said you put out 150 feet of strap and rope, and was it like a vertical drop down the face?
It's like steps almost. So there's like a 20 to 30 foot drop, and then it's really steep shale loose rock. And then down below there's another 20 to 30 foot drop. And then from that one to the valley floor is probably 300 plus feet. And they were just on that lowest shelf before it, dropped off the big cliffs. But bad spot for dogs to be, because you get them in trouble.
No kidding. Yeah, we were hunting out on Navajo, and there were some faces out there. I'd never hunted in country like that before in my life, with those steep, sheer faces like that. And another guy that was with me, he had never hunted there in any place like that either. And I said, what are we going to do if we ledge one out over that off of that mesa right there out in there? And he's like, I don't know. And I said, I think I'm going to shoot the lion and hope that it falls off. He says, no, you can't do that. The dogs will bail off with it. You run that risk. And it's like, man, I don't know. I don't know if I'm tough enough to be turning a dog loose here.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Some of those guys that get all the bay ups and the bluffs and stuff like that, I was like, man, I wish I could teach my dogs not to be so dang aggressive on them, because usually what happens with mine is they bay it up in a bluff. And then I've got this walker female that she's just insane. She gets down in places that I've had to rope her and drag her back up the cliff face. I don't even know how she got down there without dying. I've got pictures and videos of her with lions in caves or on little bitty ledges. There's one my wife was filming me. I'm laying on my belly trying to get the dog to jump up to me. she's on about a 3 foot by 3 foot ledge with this lion right in its face. I'm throwing rocks at the lion, just small rocks to keep it kind of determined away from her. Then the lion bails off that ledge and she's holding on to its tail. And fortunately, I think it jerked her tooth out. That's why she let go, because I think it hurt her. And so then she let go, and that lion bailed out across that canyon, ran up the other side. Well, none of the other dogs saw it because she's 40 feet below where my wife is filming, and she's about 10 to 15 feet below me where I can't get down and reach her. And if I jump down in there, I can't get back out. So I finally got her to jump up to me and grabbed her by the collar, and I fed her out. And then she bailed out of there, ran across the canyon, and they treated a little juniper tree right after that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's crazy. That is some wild. And where are you at, Travis?
I'm just east of Kanab, so right on the Arizona-Utah line.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild country right there. It's beautiful country. I've never hunted it, but we took the kids out there a few years ago, and of course, you know me, by now everybody's listening to the podcast. I can't sit still, and you can look at the Grand Canyon for about 2 hours, and then you got to find something fun to do. And my idea of fun and the kids' idea of fun at that age were a lot different. I wanted to drive up through the off the North Rim there and see the country and try to spot some of those legendary mule deer and drive through the desert and look for lion tracks. And they were good sports. They've grown up with it, but they weren't there to look for lion tracks and mule deer, you know?
Right. Well, that canyon that my nephew shot that cat in, it actually feeds right into the Grand Canyon. So some of those same kind of ledges you were looking at is the same kind of ledges we were in.
Man, I'll tell you what, and this is really the most realistic experience, is they put those daggone guardrails up there at the Grand Canyon, and then people just hop over them and walk out there and take pictures and stuff. And my kids were 18 and 16, and they're like, "Can we go out there and get our picture taken?" I'm like, "Hell no, you're not going out there." I said, "Those idiots out there are the reason why they have to rescue people and bring in helicopters and everything else, because those idiots get out there and they fall off and they get hurt." I said, we're not going to screw up this whole trip. Besides, I wouldn't have gone out there. Somebody would have had to pay me a lot of money to go out there.
How about that?
I never was that way. I didn't used to be that way, but as I've gotten older, I've gotten way more skittish about it.
Well, that firefighter's son. I handed him the rope and told him to take it down the face there. And I'd already hiked in and out like 3 times without a rope. And he's sliding on his butt and knocking rocks down and everything else. And I said, "Hey, just stay there." And I ran the rope down because he wasn't having it. You know, right. 17-year-old kid, he wasn't having it.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. So tell me about that video that you guys, did it go viral? Or I know Outdoor Life interviewed you over a recent video you posted, and what's the background on that one? So
the video itself, I originally posted it to my social media, and before I took it down, it had almost 1 million views. And I took it down initially. The game agency that was involved, which I hadn't named and I never have, but they were worried about the negative impact of that video on on mountain lions and research and stuff. And the biologists felt that it was a positive video because you've got a biologist and a houndsman working together, and neither one of them are cussing and nobody's freaking out or anything else like that. He thought it showed a pretty positive interaction between a mountain lion and a hunter and a biologist. But at the request of the agency, I took it down. I didn't have any. I said, I don't normally post this, but I'd sent it out to a few friends, and they told me it's the coolest thing ever, and I should post this and let people see it. And so I didn't have any problems taking it down. Well, after I took it down, then I kept in contact with the biologist, and I said, I've had Outdoor Life reach out to me about an interview, and they'd like to interview you too. Well, his agency told him no, he can't do the interview. But I'm my own private entity party and whatnot. Right. So I went ahead and did an Outdoor Life interview, and then a week later I did an interview with Field and Stream, and then I've had a media company out of United Kingdom license the video for profit. And so then when I had Good Morning America of all places reached out to me last week, and, wanted to do an interview on that video, and I I sent them the contact information for the media company that licensed that video so that they could go the right way. And haven't heard anything back.
Well, in case somebody listening to this hadn't seen the video, so the video is shot down into a real steep rocky crag canyon. There's a lion up between the splits in the rock, and the biologist is down in the bottom, and he's gonna dart the lion, and you guys were gonna collar it, right?
Yep. Yeah. We were actually prepared to. He figured the lion would fall asleep down there in that crevice, and we would have to bring it out. So we had all the ropes and everything to actually bring that lion out of the bottom of that canyon. The lion had a different plan for us. Yeah,
because when he pulled the trigger on that dart gun, you heard the dart gun pop, and then, man, it was like, let the cat out of the bag, man. You're not going to put him back. That lion went every direction, was ping-ponging off the rock walls and trying to get out of there, tried to get up on you. So how did that story all unfold? I mean, how did the biologist get involved and everything?
So the biologist had been up here on the Arizona Strip for the last several days trying to call our lions out in 13A and 13B. And then he also worked over in 12A as well. And so he had been in the area. We keep in a little bit of contact, talking back and forth and this, that, and the other. We run into each other in the hills. He's the reason that Doug Boykin and I actually got together and bred our 2 red bone dogs together. It was through him because he knew both of us, and he made that happen. So, he's a friend of mine. And so that morning, there was some fresh snow, and I've got, like any houndsman, I got way too many young dogs, but snow is a great thing for young dogs. And so he had sent me a message the night before asking if I was going to go out. And I said, yeah, I am. I said, I want to try to get these young dogs on a cat. So we went out that morning, just myself and my dogs, and we found a track. And so I turned down on the track, and they take it. It's a pretty cold morning. So, everybody likes to say snow's super easy, but when it's really cold out, snow's not super easy because, it's just like throwing a fish in the freezer. It doesn't stink as much when it's frozen as it when it's warm. Mm-hmm. So they didn't burn up the track or anything, but eventually they popped up treed, and they were down off this edge of this canyon.
How cold are we talking? How cold are we talking, Travis?
So when I started hiking after the dogs, it was like 18 degrees.
Okay. So it was the snow was fresh. It was powdery. Wasn't holding much scent.
Well, and our snow here is more of a wet snow. So when it gets like that, it actually creates a crust. And so, a lot of times the animals can walk right across the top of it, not even leave a sign other than maybe a little bit of mud where they stepped in the road or something. So, so they took that track down through some canyons and stuff, and then ended up out there where she was. And so I get out there and I'm with the dogs, and I'm filming, my dogs and stuff. And I can't see her, but she's growling at me. And, my dogs are they get, 10 feet tall and bulletproof when I show up. So I didn't mess around there very long because I didn't want them figuring out how to get down in there. I could see the lion track in the bottom. I could hear her growling at me. And I said, all right, dogs, let's go. So I whistled at the dogs, and we went back out in the truck. And as I'm driving out of there, I get an inReach message, and he'd asked me how it was going. And I said, I had one caught. I said, in the rocks. And he's like, sweet, I'm hiking back to my truck. Do you care if we go collar it? I said, yeah, no problem. So I waited for him. I sent him my location, and I waited for him to come back. I sat where I had cell signal and waited for him to show up. We went back out there and we left the dogs in the truck. We walked down there. The intention was to find the track, leaving the area, turn dogs loose on it, and catch her again and put a collar on her. Mm-hmm. Well, it turned out I'm standing in the same spot I was standing when I was filming, not the video, but when I was filming with my dogs. And I said, well, I could hear it growling. I said, there's track in the bottom. I'm not sure exactly where she is, or it is. And it's got to be underneath that overhang or in that crevice or whatever. Well, when I was there with the dogs, that crevice where he shoots that cat, you can't really see it in the video, but there's a boulder at the top of that crevice. My dogs were on top of that boulder facing down the crevice, so they could smell that cat, just going nuts. Mm-hmm. And the cat's just crouched up underneath that boulder, wedged in that crack. So when the biologist, he climbs down where I was standing when I filmed that video, he climbs down in there from right there. And that's like kind of a doorway. It's about a 2-foot ledge, but you have a sheer cliff on your right side. And then you have a pretty nasty little climb on the left side to get out of there. And behind you is nothing but air for about 100 feet to the canyon floor. So that's
how
where
wide? How wide are we talking there on where
like
you were standing? 2 feet wide, 100 feet down to one side. You got a cliffs on both, ledges on both sides of you.
Right. And we climbed in from the left side because the rock was kind of broken up and stuff. And that's the way the cat got in there. That's why she ran at me twice, because that's the way she got in. That's the way she wanted to come out. But if she would have gotten up there with me, we'd probably both be off the backside of that.
You know what app I use on my phone more than any other app besides the podcast app to listen to this here podcast? I use onX. onX Maps is the most comprehensive mapping system for hunters on the market today. I use it all the time. When I was in New Mexico, I was looking at 40,000 acres of ranch that I needed to learn. I flip open onX and just start studying the map. When I'm riding trails, I put the tracking app on. It helps me get around in strange country. I could mark water sources, food sources, bear sign, just all kinds of options within onX. You need to check out onX Maps by going to houndsmanxp.com. Click on the link on our sponsor page. You'll go right to onX Maps, and when you check out, enter the code HXP20 and you will get 20% off of your order. Know where you stand with onX.
So he climbs, he says, he's down there in the bottom, I'm up on top, and he says, it's still here. He's like, I can see the tail. It's still up here in the crack. And I'm like, holy crap, this like 3.5 hours later, this cat just stood there. So he's like, stay right here, wait for me to come back. I'm going to go get my stuff. So he went and got his ropes and his trank gun and all that stuff. And so he climbed back down on the bottom. He's like, now move over here. And so you can see it. I'm like, all right, perfect. So I climbed down in there and that's where I was standing when I was filming. So he gets his stuff ready. His ropes and everything are sitting right there next to me so that I can lower it down and pull her out and everything else. And so then he darts her, and that's when the video started.
Chaos, man. Total chaos. Thing looked like, it's like a tight wound spring, and as soon as that dart hit her, man, she uncoiled it all.
Yep. She let out a couple growls, jumped over the top of him, bounced up underneath the overhang, came straight at me. I growled at her. She went back in the bottom. She come at me again. I growled a couple more times, and then she went off that chute where you see her disappear in the video. Yeah,
man, that was a cool video for sure. I hope you get that interview for, what was it? Good Morning America.
Yeah. One of the reporters had called me last week.
Yeah. I hope you get that interview. If you get that interview, what are you going to tell them?
Well, it's just like any of the rest of them. They ask about it. Field and Stream, that they asked me specifically. They said, it seems like this is a lot of risk and a lot of work to go in for this. They're like, why are you doing it? I love chasing cats and training dogs. I said, if I can do anything to help maintain that and keep it going, I says, I'm going to do it. And they put some form of a quote like that in the Field and Stream article. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty good for them.
Have you posted a link to that Field and Stream article?
I have. Yeah, I
check that out.
I shared the links to the Outdoor Life and then the Field and Stream on my social media platforms. Yeah. Just for people to read.
Yeah. And your social media, is it on your Instagram or are you just on Facebook?
No, I do. I try to keep my Facebook more not just hunting, so I'll post, family pictures and things like that and building the house progress. And my Instagram, I just try to keep as just hunting. So Instagram, though, sometimes is funny about posting links. You can share the story once it's on there. So I don't remember if I think I shared the Field and Stream article, the Houndsman XP webpage on Facebook. I know I shared at least one of the interviews on Houndsman XP on the Facebook page.
Well, if it's not, I'll go ahead and get it over there, and it'll probably be up before this episode comes out for sure. but it's just, when you get an opportunity like that to represent houndsmen on a platform like Good Morning America,
Right.
you've got, that's exactly what we need right now. We need responsible houndsmen who are articulate like you, that can talk about it and not just stand in front of a camera and talk about, why do you do this? Man, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You got to have a few more talking points than that. That's what they're hoping they would get,
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
And you got to be able to tell people, and I know some houndsmen don't, delve into it as much as I do, but I think I get kind of on the nerdy side of it, because I like studying the habits and the habitats and how did this lion travel through this country, and then you file that away in the memory, and next time you lose a track, you're like, oh, you know what, last time it did this, and it gives you kind of a leg up, because you're like, all right, I've been studying their behavior for so long now, I'll bet you that it went and walked up through here like this, and even if the ground's frozen, you walk up through that piece of frozen ground or that slick rock, and you get on the other side, and you're like, lo and behold, there's the track. You're like,
right.
And that doesn't come from just dumb luck. I think it just comes from studying those animals and really enjoying the sport and having a passion for it.
The general public has no clue of how valuable houndsmen are to the overall strategy of wildlife management. Just the things that you've taken that biologist in there to collect samples and everything, collar that lion, doing all that stuff has far more implications and tentacles that go out into mule deer research and habitat research and ecosystem and just all kinds of stuff that goes from one houndsman having a good relationship with his biologist and putting a collar on that lion. That's something that's a message the public needs to hear. It's not just about chasing and catching the lion all the time. We're valuable. We're valuable to the sustainability of the mountain lion population, the mule deer populations, everything, and they're a part of it.
Well, and there's no way to establish what's the environment can handle, the ecosystem can handle, if you don't do some kind of study. Mountain lions are one of the most secluded creatures around, and to be able to say, okay, we're going to allow this many harvested in this particular unit. Well, how do you come up with those numbers if you don't do some kind of research or study, camera traps, your collaring, whatever the case may be? And, I think that gives those game agencies the ability to fight back against the antis, because Arizona faced a ballot initiative. Oh God, it's probably been 6 years ago that was going to outlaw cat hunting. And our game fish in Arizona, they really got ahead of it. They went out and they changed it, because back then it was an open season. You could hunt year round. There wasn't any harvest limits or anything. You had to report it and things like that. And it just was a statewide, open. Well, Game and Fish came through and they put zones and harvest limits. They took their 5 years historical data on the harvest of those units, and they came up with a number based on that. And then they review it every 5 years to see that if, that it's still sustaining that delicate balance between the predator and the prey.
Yeah.
And the antis basically backed out before it ever made it to the ballot.
Yeah. They couldn't get the signatures. They didn't want to spend the money to put the signature collection together to put it on the ballot. Yeah. It was awesome. It was awesome. Well, the reason we're doing this podcast is because you reached out to me and you wanted to talk about a subject that was, I've been wanting to do something like this for a long time. I've touched on it a little bit in the past. I actually want to get some of my former coworkers together and kind of tell a different side to the story. But you contacted me and said you wanted to rip on game wardens a little bit.
I think those are your words. I think my words were, why is there a perceived illegality, or that houndsmen are the bad guy when in all reality, most 99%, just like in any groups of life, 99% of people are good people, whether they're deer hunters, elk hunters, or whatever. It just takes that one rotten apple to spoil the whole basket.
The thing that I thought was really interesting about the fact that you reached out to me is because, especially after I found out who you work for, and what you do for a living. So I think you could probably do this for your own occupation as well.
Yeah.
Who do you work for, Travis? Are you going to admit it on a podcast?
You really want me to? I know that.
Yeah. Oh man, Travis works for the BLM
resource agency.
Yeah, he works for the BLM, and he's an enforcement officer. So it was just a natural fit that we get another law enforcement officer on here to help me navigate this whole thing, because it's a different profession. It's been right after 9/11, we were the heroes, and in 2018 and 19, we became the zeros. And it's funny how culture changes and stuff like that. But there's always been this very special relationship between houndsmen and game wardens.
Yeah. Yes, there has.
Oh man, I'll tell you what. For a long time, I was running hounds and coon hunting and different things since way before I ever became a conservation officer here in Indiana. And when I first started, man, it was the weirdest dynamic. Okay. The people that were hiring me didn't trust me because I was a coon hunter. Right. And my old friends didn't trust me anymore because I became a game warden.
Yeah.
So it was just a weird deal. And just let's just kind of lay this out and talk about what you want to talk about, since you brought it up.
You know, it's funny because it's agency specific, quite honestly, because when I got into hounds, I was already in law enforcement. I've been, in law enforcement of some form, shape or form for the last 24 years. And I was a county deputy for about 10. And I got into hounds when I was county deputy because of my buddy that's out in Missouri now. But back then, he used to live about 5 minutes down the road from me, down in Dewey, Arizona. And so I got into hounds because in Arizona, it was hard to draw deer and elk tags. And I just wanted to hunt more. And so I actually got into hounds just to hunt more. And to be able to go out and be in the hills and have an excuse for it. I just didn't want to be out there just glassing for no reason and whatnot. So I got into hounds for that. But when I got into hounds with the sheriff's office, nobody batted an eye. Nobody even cared one little bit about it.
No.
And when I left the sheriff's office and went to Border Patrol, nobody cared there either. Nobody gave me any grief or anything else. But with this resource agency, I work hand in hand with a lot of game wardens. And they banter me all the time about, oh, you can't be a houndsman and work for them. What you're an outlaw and blah blah. And they give me a hard time about it and this, that, and the other. But at the same token, I'm somebody that they can trust, and I think it's just because they figure, we got that brotherhood in law enforcement, and so they figure they can trust somebody they know. And what I'd like to see is, all of us houndsmen should get to know our local game wardens. I mean, it's not like some of us travel all over the country and hunt like yourself. You're East Coast to West Coast and South and North, and it makes it a little harder to get to know your game wardens that are in your area. But your home base, you should be on a first name basis. Hey, Tom, how's it going today? You have anything going on you need me to watch for? Are you watching for anybody? This kind of thing. And, help those guys out, because in the end, they can be our biggest ally, because they're in meetings with commissioners and different things like that can really help us out they can put in a positive note for us. And when they're pushing for it and helping us out, then we're on a united front instead of, battling from two different angles.
I think one thing that people probably don't realize, and a lot of people, not everybody, but every person that I ever worked with, the reason we got into, there were a few exceptions to this. I can't say every person. We were serious about hunting and fishing and the outdoors, and it's different from a city policeman or a county deputy or even a state trooper. Game wardens go to work to protect it, and then they're in their off time they're out there hunting and fishing and doing those things too. And it's not like city, police officers. They don't cook meth on their off time.
No.
They're not supposed to be they're not stealing stuff and
Right.
and they're not supposed to be anyway. I know there's bad actors in every profession, but it's not the normal thing. So something that we chose to do to recreate was also, or something we chose as a profession was very important to us for recreation purposes too.
Yeah.
And so that's what is the difference, and probably why. And I'm not justifying the bad actors, and there's plenty of, I was a supervisor for several years and I saw a lot of stupidity among our own ranks, tickets that shouldn't have been written, just stuff that was way over the line. And I'll tell a couple stories here in a few minutes about that. But that's why game wardens a lot of times come across as being so passionate about what they do and why we do it, because we take it personal. It's like, dude, you're out here shooting a 200 class mule deer or a whitetail or a 300. I would have liked to hunt that. So it's a deal where when somebody goes out and they poach wildlife with the first tenet of the North American model says wildlife shall be kept in a public trust. It belongs to all the people. So when somebody breaks the rules and goes out there and poaches this deer, they're stealing from every ethical sportsman out there.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
That's why it comes across as hitting a little bit harder. But none of us are above, forming jaded opinions and stereotypes and things like that.
Right. Well, and I think, like you said, a lot of people, in my age class and your age class, they grew up hunting, fishing, camping, doing those things, and they wanted to contribute to that, and so they chose the career that they did, for a couple of reasons. One, you get to spend every day outside if you want to. You get to be outside driving those roads and learning the habits of animals and interacting with the public and things like that. And that's, if that's not what you're out there to do, then, why in the world are you out there? Go be a street cop, or something. Right. But, but it was bringing a different group of professionals that wanted to be in the landscape and on the landscape and helping preserve that landscape and all the animals on it for future generations. And, but I think, one of the issues we face nowadays is some of these, and it's not just game wardens, it's law enforcement in general, but they're so wet behind the ears that some of these guys coming out of the academy, they've never even put a worm on a hook. They don't know the difference between a barbed hook and a regular barbed hook. They don't know what the difference between a rubber worm and a live worm is, because it's just, they didn't grow up doing it. You've got to teach them how to set a tent up. You've got to teach them how to, go out and, work, because they didn't grow up doing it. So when you talk about, glassing for deer and glassing for this, it's like, they're like, well, what do you mean? And you hike up to a mountain and look glass for these animals. They have no clue. So it's an education, from the agency department side and from, us that interact with them, and one of the best things we can do as houndsmen is get those game wardens in our truck, whether it's on their day on or their day off. If their supervisor will let them do it on duty, let them do it on duty and take them out and show them what it's all about. And, and because they don't understand, all they can do is go by videos they see online and things they hear from their fellow game wardens or from their fellow law enforcement.
Oh, man.
The only way we can change that is by getting them in the truck with us. And because we can talk until we're blue in the face, but until they get out there and experience firsthand, they'll never understand where our passion comes from.
100%. 100%. One of the things you touched on, a few things there. When I was training recruits, I'd always ask them, why do you want to do this job? And as time went on, towards the end of my career, you got a lot more kids standing there that say, well, I just want to help people. It's like, go be a fireman, go be a fireman, because those guys are there to help people, and we are too, but that should not be the number one reason that you're here. There's plenty of places you can go to help people. We got to have people that are dedicated to the resource, law enforcement, all that sort of stuff. But part of that, you talked about, the new guys not knowing, and then the old guys, teaching them. That can go both ways.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that I experienced when I got hired, and I was hired in 1990, and we were just coming off of the end of the huge fur boom of the late 70s that ran through the mid 80s. So we're only 5 years away. If you hit it dead smack in the middle, 1985 was the end of the fur boom. We still had officers working for us at that time that had lived through all the nefarious bull crap, the calls in the middle of the night about people's trespassing, about lights in the field, about people driving through fields. We had people that were smoking den trees for a $35, $40 raccoon, setting woods on fire. We had barns that were burnt down when people were trying to smoke raccoons out from underneath barns. I mean, it was a very damaging time for the person. And every person, I mean, you could drive through New Bern, Indiana, and New Bern has got a population of about 300 people. And there were at least 15 people just in New Bern that had coon dogs at the time.
Yeah.
So I've always tried to lay this out for the new guys. It's like, okay, when some of these older guys that are telling you all these stories about coon hunters and painting it with a broad brush, the only experience they ever had was with the guys that were willing to break the law, that were going to do anything they could. They were the quick money grab guys. Coon hides are up. Hey, $40 a coon hide. If I can hit 100 of those, that's $4,000. That buys Christmas. That buys, back in those days, that bought gas for a year. That was a big swing of things. Yeah. And people were willing to do whatever. Well, when that fur market dried up, our houndsman numbers in Indiana went down. Those same guys that were willing to smoke barns and cut fence and trespass and do all those things, now they started cooking meth and snagging paddlefish and stealing wire off of copper sites. They were stealing anhydrous ammonia. That is not the typical houndsman, your typical hunter that's out there.
Right.
So there was been a very poor job by our side to pass that on.
That's that broad stroke, and as professionals, we can't allow the bad seed to jade our opinion towards the entire group, and you see that in all walks of life, but we have to really focus on the individual. If that's the first time you contact that person, you don't know anything about them. You don't know what kind of person they are. You don't know what they've done in their past, what they've done what they plan on doing or anything else. You just can't go into that thinking, yep, oh, he's a coon hunter. He's probably going to go burn this barn down. He's going to, do something illegal or whatever.
Right.
That's where the law enforcement professionals, the old timers, they get jaded, and you got to be careful with that with the young guys, because they can jade a young guy right from the get-go. And then you just are continuing that cycle where if you approach each individual as a person in a separate incident, a separate person, and deal with them on that particular incident level instead of trying to stereotype them into a group, I think we get a lot better results, and it definitely improves the relationships for the future.
But don't you think good law enforcement officers are able to? I mean, the initial contact starts somewhere, and it's not. You don't automatically give the guy that's on a Sunday morning that's dressed in a suit and tie with his family in the minivan. You don't give him a double look and think, man, he's out to break the law.
Right.
He's probably hauling his kids to grandma's house, to church, and then to grandma's house, So where do we draw that line as law enforcement officers between being good at our jobs and then also doing it in a professional way?
Well, I really think that you approach every situation as professional, and if somebody gives you the reason to think they're doing something nefarious, then you go that route. But until they give you, they constantly talk about the sixth sense and the hair on the back of your neck and things like that. Until you have some kind of a sign or an idea that somebody's doing something nefarious, there's no reason to treat everybody like a criminal. 95%, they told us clear back in the academy in 2000, 95% of the people you deal with are just going to be honest, hardworking people that just made a mistake, whether it's, at that time I was with the county. So whether it's driving too fast or they forgot to signal or they forgot to stop. Well, it's the same in the game world too. Sometimes people make mistakes, and if they own up to it and they're honest about it, they shouldn't be treated like the nefarious criminal. I mean,
yeah, they're not
people.
El Chapo.
Yeah. You make mistakes, and as long as you own up to your mistakes, that shouldn't be held against you.
I had a guy one time, I was on foot patrol. He had a bait in this area. It's illegal to bait white-tailed deer in Indiana. It still is, even, still today.
Right.
But I knew that bait was there, and I was walking in and doing a foot patrol and walked in on him, and he shot. We were a buck on. Now, let me think about this. We were a one antlerless permit zone at the time. And I was standing there and he shot 2 does while I was standing there, and he shot them over bait. And, typically that becomes, you got them red-handed. There's not a whole lot they can say, but they're not real happy to see you regardless. Right. It's like, exactly. You shouldn't be here. You're trespassing. None of that happened. This is why this stuck out to me. This guy, he's like, yep, this is my family property. I knew this guy was totally humble about the whole thing. He's like, I knew what I was doing was wrong. He went to court and told the court that he was wrong, pled guilty. Judge ended up finding him very minimally just because he owned up to it. The guy was a first class act. And when you encounter people like that, 99 times out of the 100, if I would have seen him dragging one doe out, maybe the same guy, see him back at his truck. Oh, it looks like he did some good today. He would have never fessed up. He wouldn't have come clean to his truck and said, yeah, I've got a bait and another dead deer back there that's illegal. Right. I'm not saying that he, I don't know him well enough to say that he would stand up like that, but you bring a valid point. If we just act like this guy's just out here doing a job, and if he's got me on something, then I just need to be like, man, I didn't even know that, or if that's the truth, because our lie detectors start going off when we know that. But
yeah,
there's a lot of things we can do as houndsmen to help the situation too. But
oh yeah.
The Houndsman XP Podcast Network is powered by Cajun Lights. All of your lighting needs for hunting can be taken care of at Cajun Lights. They have 3 models of cap lights. I'm going to run through them real quick. You've got the Rougarou, which is their high-end light. If you're a competition hunter and you got to find that coon up in a tree and it's all riding on finding that coon, you'll want the Rougarou on your head. Next is the Bayou. That's a pretty standard light, but it's got packed with features. It's got multiple colors. It's got walking lights. It's got the red, the green, the amber. It's all built in right into that light. And then you have one of my personal favorites, the Micro Gator. The Micro Gator is an ultra lightweight cap light. It's got all the features of a white light, red, green, and amber. I've used this light for everything from finding bear tracks early in the morning to coon hunting at night to working on plumbing in the house, changing tires on the side of the road. My truck doesn't leave the driveway without a Cajun light in it, and that light is the Micro Gator. Every Cajun light is durable, made from the highest quality components, and it is backed by Cajun's top-rated customer service. Check out Cajun Lights. You can go to our website at houndsmanxp.com. Go to our sponsors page, hit that link, it'll take you right to Cajun Lights. Check them out. They got a lot of stuff to offer over at Cajun Lights. I got to give a couple quick shout outs here to some people. And the first one is for Freedom Hunters. So they're getting ready to have their Jim Shockey Classic. That's going to be on April 14th and 15th at the Bransley Resort in Adairsville, Georgia. There's going to be sporting clays, golf outing, and it's all to raise money to get America's veterans into the field hunting. You can get tickets and all the information at freedomhunters.org. I also want to give a shout out to Dogs Are Treed. We haven't talked about them for a while. I've been negligent here, supporting my friends Kevin and Nancy Hall out there in Ingham, Idaho. Check out Dogs Are Treed. They've got Paws Are Protected, which is wonderful stuff. I use it on all of my dogs. They've got Dogs Are Hydrated. It's getting warmer, and hydration is key to extreme performance. They are building the best travel tie-outs in the business. My trucks don't leave the driveway on a trip without my Dogs Are Treed travel tie-out system. Use the discount code HXP 20% off, all capital letters. Check out Dogs Are Treed, and while you're there, pick up a copy of Tracking the Long Walker. Great book.
Well, when you I had an incident where my dogs actually killed a lion, back in 2014. It was a young Tom, and it wouldn't stay in the tree. Every time I got to the tree, it bailed out. And, if you know anything about lions, they don't have huge lungs. And
right.
Eventually, after that third time, I was filming across the canyon, and the lion ran up the canyon. It came back on its tracks and took a 90-degree turn. The dogs went past it, and then it came down and was just kind of trotting down through the bottom, and the dogs caught up to it. Well, they stretched it. It didn't take much to kill that lion, with the 6 dogs. And I packed the whole carcass out because I was like, you know what? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this, but I know I need to get a hold of the game warden and let him know what happened. So I loaded the whole thing up. I didn't cut it. I didn't do anything with it. I loaded it up in my backpack, and I packed it out of the bottom of that canyon, called him, met him I drove to his house, met him at his house. I said, I've got a tag. I can put it on this. I said, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. And he says, I can write you a warning for this, but then it goes in our records. I said, well, I don't want that. I said, I'll just put my tag on it. He's like, that's fine. Do it that way. So, it's just about owning up to the mistakes you make.
Right. Right. Well, there's a lot of things that this is my talk, because I do know that there are some wildlife officers, game wardens that listen to this podcast. This is my advice about how to interact with houndsmen. This first thing, if you don't know anything about it, like you said, go out and expose yourself. We had some coyote hunters that were hunting some flat ground, great place to run coyote hounds and stuff like that. Well, I found them out there running and had a few calls. This is how it kind of all unfolded. We had some landowners out there that were calling in and complaining about these coyote hunters. Their dogs were running through the yard. Their dogs were doing this. The dogs were doing that. And so I knew these guys, and I went out there and talked to them initially, and found out that the people that are calling were the people that owned the 3 acres or the 4 acres that butted up to thousands of acres of ag ground that they had written permission to hunt on. And so then it became a community outreach project from that point. It's like, hey, we got to live and let live here a little bit. But most of our officers were automatically like, oh, they're coyote hunters, they're doing this, they're doing that. I would go out there. The first time I made contact with them, I went out there and I pulled up, and I mean, everybody's like looking down at the ground and kicking rocks to the side and trying to find any excuse to be able to get away from me and get in their truck. Right. And it wasn't because they were doing anything wrong. It's because they'd had multiple bad experiences or controversial experiences with officers. It's like, what are you guys doing? I said, I'm just out here listening to some hounds run. I love listening to hounds. Yeah. Man, those guys looked at me like I was from Mars. I'm like, yeah. Really? And I ended up driving around with them most of the day, or for a couple hours anyway, and just watching hounds work. Yeah. And before you know it, you got an invite to come back. And when the next time I run through there and I patrol, this is funny. I was driving down the road out in that area one time, and some guy flags me down. And this guy didn't have a dog box. And he goes, what are you doing out here? And I said, I'm just patrolling through. And they said, will you leave those coyote hunters alone? They've all got written permission, and they're doing us a big service, And I'm like, hey, I know who they are. I just drive out through there, and they just wave, and I'd stop and talk to them, ask them if they were doing any good that day. Yeah. But I also had to write tickets a couple times when you're shooting from a road and stuff like that. Uh-huh. But it was just like, hey, that's just Chris. He's just doing his job.
Yeah. Well, and we don't, with my job, we don't deal with the necessarily the regulation of hunting. That's the state agencies, but we deal with the commercial use. So guides and outfitters and things like that. And, we roll in and they're sitting up on a hill. I'll park down by the trucks, walk up there with them, ask them about how, if they found anything, this, that, and the other. We sit there and have good conversations. Most of our clients, most of the guides out here, they're pretty much the same guys over and over again. So they get to know you after several years. I've been in this area for 12 years. So they get to know you. And then you walk up and shake hands with them and talk to them. And their clients are looking at you like, what in the world's going on here?
Right.
They can't believe that their paid guide is on such a friendly basis with the local law enforcement.
They ought to be really happy about that, because it's not like if they were an outlaw, then we wouldn't have walked up and shook hands or been on amicable terms from the get-go with them,
and from that angle too, you talked about the guy that shot the deer over bait. I had a guide one time, and he was guiding a client on a unit that they weren't permitted to be on. And I talked to him, and he's like, well, I'm just working for so-and-so. And they told me that we're allowed to be out here. And so I got a hold of the owner of the company, and I told him what happened. And he's like, I thought we were permitted to be out there. And I said, no, you're permitted on the forest, not over here. And he says, I know you got to probably write a ticket. He says, but if you would write it to me. He's like, he's my guy. I told him to go down there, write it to me. Don't write the ticket to him if that's okay. He's like, write it to me. And so I wrote him the ticket. He paid it. And the next year they filed their application for a permit. And my agency reached out to me and said, well, do you have any issues with this? And I said, no. I said, they did the right thing. I said, they thought they were permitted. They weren't. I wrote him a ticket. He paid it. I said, there's no reason not to let them have a permit for hunting on this area. So,
yeah. It's not like they've got a long history of smuggling drugs through there,
Right.
It's not, right. You got to look at things in perspective. We had a couple of young officers one time, competition cast, and I'm not going to mention any names because these guys are good guys, and they just were young and made a decision on the spot. But anyway, these competition coon hunts, it was a Labor Day Classic. We drew people from all over the Midwest that would come to this area to hunt for the Labor Day Classic. And when you show up at the club, and this will be mainly anybody that's in the East knows how this works for the most part, but for the Western guys, when you show up at the club, you draw out what's in casts. And each cast has got a guide, somebody that's supposed to know the area, have permission. There's stipulations in the rules for guides, and they're supposed to be able to put you in safe places to hunt and things like that. Well, this particular cast of 4 guys, you had the guide who was local, and then the other 3 were from out of state. So when a competition coon hunter shows up, he's actually paying his money in good faith that the guide is going to put them in places that they have permission. Well, this guide put them in a place that they didn't have permission. And our officers showed up, and the guide did the same thing. He's like, man, just write me the ticket. I'm the one responsible. Well, the officers decided to write all 4 guys tickets.
Oh,
yeah. Decided to write everybody a ticket. And I was like, and I wasn't even a supervisor at the time. I was just a senior officer. And I said, why did you guys write everybody in that cast a ticket? You got 2 guys from Missouri and 1 from Mississippi. Like, well, they were hunting where they weren't supposed to. I was like, oh, okay. So you think they knew that, or were they acting in good faith? It doesn't matter. Well, we were at a training function that day, and I heard him and the other officer talking about goose hunting. And I asked him, I said, whose property were you goose hunting on? And the one officer said, oh, I don't know. It was his spot. I just went with him. I was like,
right.
Oh, so you didn't have permission to hunt there, and you were hunting without consent. And he looked at me and he was like, starting to put the dots together. And I said, exactly. I said, you were hunting on the officer's, this guy's permission I said, what's different about that than the coon hunters? Change this guy's perspective for the rest of his career, and it's not like we don't walk on water. We make dumb mistakes. I made
Oh,
a
yeah.
ton of dumb mistakes in my career. The older guys that helped me get past that were guys just like you, Travis, that said, man, you can't approach every situation like that, with the same. And that's what a lot of younger officers do. And there's a lot of pressure on them to do it too.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Well, and and that goes right back to that not knowing, had those officers that wrote those tickets on that cast, maybe they didn't understand what a coon cast was. I mean,
had no clue.
I know a little bit about it, but I've never been involved in one. And I know some of the framework for it, but I wouldn't be the guy to go to and try to explain it to somebody. You'd have to put yourself in that situation so that you can understand what happens. What are the elements of this? Is it one guy's the guide, like you said, one guy's the judge, and then you've got your coon hunters. You have to put yourself in there. But if the officer doesn't have any clue on all the different elements, they're going to go in just like those officers did. Everybody's in violation. Here you go.
Exactly. And it wasn't like I never gave coon hunters a free pass. People knew that if I showed up and they were doing something wrong, that they were probably going to be in deep doo-doo because they couldn't pull the wool. They couldn't pull the wool over my eyes. And I approached that like this. I approached it as, hey man, I'm a houndsman. I'm a coon hunter, and you don't get to represent me. You don't get to represent me. You can't be the broad brush for me. You know what you're doing is wrong. And when you step across that line, we might have hunted together last week in a PKC Open event, but tonight you're out here packing a rifle during running season, trying to kill coons illegally because you think your dog needs them.
Right.
You can't expect me not to do my job,
But that should be the way it is, no matter if you're talking the coon hunters, the Western big game hunters, the law enforcement, any profession. We, as a member of that profession or that hobby or that passion, we need to hold everybody else accountable, because if you don't, you let that one bad apple rot that whole basket. If you're the one that's in there causing the problems and everything else, and nobody's calling you out for it and holding you accountable for it, you're just doing everybody that's in that basket that's not saying something is doing everybody else in that basket a disservice. Yeah. And if we start calling more people out, hold more people accountable individually, whether, like I said, regardless of profession, passion, or whatever, it would clean things up. And then people would be less likely to maybe stray across that line, because they're like, you know what? Everybody in this group is going to rat me out if I do something stupid. I just need to start being a better person. Right.
Yeah, that's a tough code to break in the hound hunting world. Deer hunters and duck hunters, I'll just say it. I mean, the reason why wildlife managers listen, or it seems to us that they've got more pull, is if I'm hunting deer and I'm hunting a 200-inch whitetail, or I think it's, everything gets ground shrinkage, of course, but I think I'm on old Rastus mossy horns, and I see a guy 2 ridges over shining. I'm walking out from my stand, and it's dark out, and I see a guy 2 ridges over shining a light, and I hear a shot. I'm calling, calling in, because that could have been my buck,
Right. Yeah.
And it's houndsmen just won't. I'm not advocating that we all become snitches. That's not what I'm saying. But we've got to start policing our own ranks a little bit more if we want that respect and be able to have effective change and a credible voice.
Absolutely.
When it comes time that they're trying to take stuff away from us.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that? Because that just seems dirty. I mean, that's like, I'm sure there's going to be people that think that I'm trying to get people to turn on each other and be rats. That's not what I'm saying. But how do we get that message out to do that?
It's like a comparison, like we were talking about the game warden that grows up, hunting, fishing, and doing all that and understanding all the elements of it. I think hound hunting is a lot of the same way. You got that group of hound hunters. And I separate them, and I won't be derogatory towards anybody. I'll try not to, Chris. I'll try my best. But you got that group of hound hunters, guys with dogs that they're just out there to catch stuff and kill it. They don't appreciate the work, the time, the desire of the dogs, the passion of chasing the game, watching a pup that you raised at your place go from, nursing on mama all the way up to barking under a tree. They don't have that connection. And I attribute that to the same as, a game warden who didn't grow up hunting and fishing doesn't have that connection with that, the game or the environment and the ecosystem that they're involved in, where a houndsman that truly does it for, the dogs, they have the passion, and those are the ones that make the best, presidents of the houndsman associations, and the ones that are out there, fighting like yourself, fighting for our rights and our ability to continue doing this. It's the guys that are out there that they're like, I don't care what you say. I'm out here to catch stuff and kill stuff. And, I'm getting paid to do it.
Famous.
Yeah. I don't care about all that other stuff. I don't even pay attention to it. I turn my dogs loose and I go to the tree when they're treed. I'm not saying that all of them do it, but some of them, they don't even walk the tracks with their dogs. They turn them loose, and the next time they see their dogs is at the tree. So they don't understand anything to do with the nature and the habitat of the animal they're pursuing. And so I think they lose the connection with the dogs and the passion for the sport that a true houndsman has versus, somebody with dogs.
Age will help you get this clarity too. I'm not going to lie. You slow down on your ability to get out there and I'm not nearly as fast now as I was 25 years ago. No way. 20 years ago, I was helping my kids walk these hills and stuff. And now my son can take off and just leave me in the dust.
Yep.
But you get age allows you to get a little bit of clarity about things. And you used to have this, we used to teach this in hunter ed, was the developmental stages of hunters. When you first start hunting, you just go through the shooting phase. You just want to shoot. You love plinking with a 22. You just love feeling the recoil. And then you progress all the way through it, and you get to this stage where you feel like that you've got to prove yourself to everyone else. That's called the trophy stage. I've got the hardest dogs around because I hunt every day, and you show the tailgate pics, and you want to brag on Facebook, and you keep going all the way up to the end of it is the mentoring stage, where you want to teach other people the right way to do it. And some people never get out of certain phases,
Yeah.
Some people stay stuck in the trophy phase their entire life, and they never look beyond that. But you don't have to be an old guy to get to the point of being in the mentoring stage either. I've met several younger houndsmen that know the values and the importance, and they strive to do that. And they're guys that are willing to help other people.
Yeah. It's no different than, a field training officer teaching a young officer.
Yeah.
You can teach that officer how to operate and how to do things the right way and the way that you see that they should operate. And maybe that makes a lasting impression, and they do that for the rest of their career. It's no different with hound hunting or any other kind of hunting. You take somebody under your wing and you're mentoring them and you're showing them the way you do it. And you got to approach that from a non, conceited or egotistical type of thing. Say, this is the way I do it. Lots of other people do it different ways. This is what works for me. This is how I like to do it. Hunt with other people. Look what they do. Take the things you like and use those. And the things you don't like, don't do them. But this is the way I do it. And this is why I do it this way. And I think if you just take them out with that attitude, not saying my way is the only way to do it, I think you get the message out there a lot better than, when you're trying to say, well, this is the only way you do it.
Yeah, it's very dependent on having those, when you're talking about development of officers, we go through the same stages of development. Yeah. So you could talk about game warden development. You get that young officer, he just wants to make contact with people. He has no clue what he's doing. He's like, yeah, I talked to 30 hunters. I checked 40 license today. He's just firing the shots. Boom, boom. I checked 40 fishermen today while I was out there. Oh, yeah. What'd you find? Well, I think they were all legal, or they were all illegal, or whatever. It's like, there's no way. Okay. So and some officers never move out of that trophy stage either. We get stuck in different phases of our career. And I'm not making excuses for anybody. This is a call out to people that are listening to this podcast. I understand this because a lot of times what happens is a guy that gets about 5 to 7 years on, he thinks he's got everything figured out. He gets that phase where he's going to start, bragging about these cases he makes. He wants everybody to pat him on the back and say, man, that's a great case you made. And then if he does a good enough job, he gets plucked out of the field and sent to headquarters, and he's running the show. He never got out of the trophy stage. So he's putting mandates back on these young officers that if you really want to, accomplish things, and then you need to write a lot of tickets.
Yeah. Yep.
And they've lost sight. And when you talk to those officers or those supervisors that have been in supervisor positions that had about 5 to 7 years on when they got promoted, all they remember is, man, you guys ought to be having fun. That was a great job. That's a fun job.
Yeah.
And they lost sight. They never made it all the way through the different developmental phases. And they get stuck.
They get stuck on that quantity versus quality.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
we used to have that, when I was with the sheriff's office, is the same thing, very similar to what you're talking about with the young game wardens. You get a deputy that comes straight out of the academy, and man, they were out there pulling every car over 5 mile an hour license.
I get to turn the sirens on and turn the lights on, and
1,000 stops a year. And it's like, well, all right, well, did you get any drugs? Did you get any warrants? Did you get anything? Just, you got a license plate, like, good job, but look a little further, dig a little deeper. Let's focus on some quality and not just quantity. Yeah.
Yeah. You missed the 2 bales of marijuana in the back of that open pickup truck because you were worried about the taillight and the widget, the widget ticket you were going to write for the taillight and the expired license plate. Never mind the 2 bales of marijuana.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. But so, like I said, I'm not making excuses, but there are things that we as houndsmen can do, and that's be a little bit more hospitable. But I've been on the other side of this too, especially since I retired. I have been all over the country and hunted, and I've had encounters with different game wardens over that time period. And it's funny, man. It's funny to sit back and be on the other side of it and just watch and watch how everybody squirms. And I'm with you, man. I'm just like, every time they pull up, it's like, okay, what's this guy going to do? How's he going to handle this situation? And just watch him, and you see how your buddies act, and then they see how that I act. And it's kind of a crazy dynamic. And I see so much of myself a lot of times and think about dumb things that I've seen and different things. I'll give you a good story. We had a young officer who was sitting out up on this secluded lane watching for guys to come through and jacklight deer, shine lights and shoot deer. And it was Thanksgiving weekend, and he sees a side-by-side come down the road, which is legal to operate on the road where he was at, pull up in this lane. He gets his binoculars out, and he's watching these 2 guys get out of this side-by-side with their coon lights on. He sees the dog box, sees them get hounds out of the back of the truck. He knows they're out there coon hunting. He also sees 2 other people that don't have lights on. They haven't got any of the equipment. And he's wondering what's going on. So he pulls up there. And when he pulls up, he's got 2 young kids that are brothers and 2 sisters that were their cousins that came in from Pennsylvania. These 2 girls are standing there in fur trim, little, fake fur trim puffy coats and Ugg boots. And the 2 boys are all decked out in all the coon hunting garb. And he starts checking hunting license, and he writes these 2 girls a ticket for not having a hunting license and no continuous burning light while they're standing there. And the dad of these 2 girls, the dad of the 2 boys, calls our office. And he's like, what kind of crap is this?
Right.
And it's like, I called that officer and I was like, dude, I said, these 2 girls came in from Pennsylvania. They were tired of sitting around the house listening to old people tell stories about their childhood. the boys said, hey, I know what we can do. The girls were out there for a side-by-side and a break. They weren't out there to hunt, you know? And but that's a kind of boneheaded bull crap that gets around that help shape or tear down, that give Game Warden that bad rap. It's like, why would you write that ticket?
Right. Well,
they were out there, and there's a coon dog there.
And that furthers, because how many people do those girls go and tell that happened? And it just furthers that negative persona. Yep.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything for creating good relationships.
None. Zero. You talk about, that ranks right up there with one of the dumbest things I ever saw somebody write a ticket for.
Right.
But that same officer would walk up to a turkey blind where a husband and wife are sitting in the turkey blind, and the husband's decked out in camo, and the wife's sitting back in the back reading a book. And he'd never ask her for her license because they're turkey hunting. They're not houndsmen.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of work, and some of it just comes down to common sense of putting yourself in the situation and looking at the whole picture.
Well, and I don't think there's as much common as you want to think there is. I think it's a rarity anymore, that common sense. It's almost like you can't teach common sense, but we almost have to figure out a way to teach common sense. And I think it just, and that just goes back to what we've been talking about. If you didn't grow up doing it and you don't know how things work, you don't have any life experience to give you that common sense to know that in that instance, those girls weren't hunting. They were just there as spectators. You don't have any idea because you have no idea how anything works because you haven't done it. Yeah.
You get that young game warden out there that's standing there that wants to write the two girls a ticket. It's like, why would you do that? Why? Well, they were coon hunting. Okay. So you dig a little deeper and you find out that when he was a kid, his family farm had, people that trespassed on it that coon hunted. Like, okay, now let's look at this. So because you had a bad experience as a young kid, you now think that all coon hunters are bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So you just had an interaction with young kids. Are they going to leave here thinking, what are they going to think about game wardens in the future? They had a bad experience with one. Mm-hmm. We didn't do much to help our cause here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Travis, what kind of takeaways can we wrap this thing up with, and put a bow on it? I think we need to lay out a couple things that game wardens can do to improve the relationships in their areas. But we also have to talk to houndsmen and wrap this thing up and say what they need to do.
One thing I think that'd be really helpful for both sides of the group is, you've probably been to Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation banquet or, Bighorn Sheep or Wild Turkey or whatever. You always see game wardens there.
Yep.
Well, in all your travels, I can only speak for one banquet that I go to for the houndsmen here in Utah, and we have game wardens there. Yep. But as houndsmen and as game warden, as a houndsman, we should be inviting our local game wardens to come to our banquets and give them a free pass. Don't even make them pay for the dinner. Let us chip in and pay for the dinner. And as game wardens, they should be seeking out these banquets and going to them just as much as they go to the other groups, because it's the only way to foster those relationships, because then you're not in the field. There's not violations. Nobody's doing something wrong. That's when you can sit there face to face, man to man, woman to man, whatever, and talk and really express ideas. The game wardens can express concerns they have, with what's going on, what they're seeing, things that they're having issues with. The houndsmen can they can express their concerns and issues with whether it's legislative issues, whether it's road closure issues, whatever. You can have open dialogue in those environments because there's no stress from either side. Nobody's in the field. Nobody's got dogs down. The game warden's not out looking for violations. Everybody's in basically a social environment. And I think that's really where we do our best work, is in a social type environment where there's no preconceived notions from either side, because you're in a social environment. You can just kind of freely speak and really get to know each other's, side of the coin.
100%. You go to the Michigan Bear Hunters Association, they've got a really good organization and they put on a great banquet. Law enforcement is there. They're in the room and they see legislators there. They see natural resources commissioners there. Everybody is on neutral ground at that point, yep. And same way with Wisconsin and different things like that. And the thing that Houndsman that we tried to do with the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance is I tried to make our houndsmen aware that, these officers go through evaluations every year. We get evaluated on public appearances. We got to do so many of those. We've got to do education programs and all of these groups of houndsmen. We've got clubhouses scattered around this state that hold events.
Yeah.
You stop in there while you're working, eat a cheeseburger, drink a Coke, talk to the guys, walk out of there, mark it down as a public appearance for a conservation club, yep. and get down the road. Mm-hmm. It helps you. It puts a different face on for them, and it's neutral ground. But it also takes some courage from the officer to do that.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. It always baffled me. When the National Wild Turkey Federation banquets came out, it was just like, man, have you got your tickets to the banquet yet? Are you going to the banquet? Are you going to this? But when it came to interacting with coon hunters, it's like, I'm not going in there. Why wouldn't you go in there? You'll talk to them out in the field on the side of a dark country road, but you won't go into a club. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's happened is a lot of these clubs and stuff have the officers that have took my advice. Now they've got these clubs set up to teach hunter education for them, and all they have to do is administer the class. Just oversee it. They're not stuck in the 4-H fairgrounds for 7 hours or 10 hours to teach hunter ed. They've got all the club members set up as instructors. They show up for an hour, get the class rolling, and then they can go put their boat on the river and go check license or, do something. Yeah.
Makes their job easier.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
So there's
all kinds of opportunities.
Made that little bit of effort.
Yep. And now you've changed the perception of the game warden that we're all outlaws, and you've changed the perception of the houndsmen that say they're all dickheads.
Yep. Exactly.
Honestly, just saying it like it is.
Yep, for sure.
So, what else we got, Travis? What else was on your mind? What do you think?
Well, I think that other topic that I sent you about was probably it'd have to be another time because that could go for a long time about police canines versus hounds.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We'll definitely have to get back together and talk about that one.
But as far as the game warden stuff, I just think both sides, we just need to do a lot better job because, in the end, whether it's the houndsmen or the elk hunters or the deer hunters and, in the game agencies, we're all fighting the politicians. And if we can be more united in that fight and we can understand, the mission that we're trying to push forward and maintain the North American hunting model, conservation model, then I think we do a lot better off in these states that we're facing the politicians if we're united. If they're hearing it from their constituents, they're hearing it from their agencies, I'm not saying they're going to listen, but I think we have a lot better chance if they're getting it from both sides versus just one side.
Sure.
Because they can just say, oh, the hunters are just whining and complaining. They're just mad because we changed a rule or whatever. But if they're getting it from both sides, I think we have a better chance of fighting these things.
Man, I'll tell you what, and it's tough because when you see a state going through legislative efforts or something that's controversial for any hunting, but us as houndsmen, a lot of times those employees for the State Fish and Game Agency are told we're neutral,
right.
We're not going to have a say in this. So it's very frustrating for us as hunters to understand why this guy that says he supports us isn't stepping up right now and saying that this is wrong and we stand with houndsmen or your biologist or whoever.
Right.
It's just part of it. They get gag orders put on them. They're told that they can't be involved, stuff like that. But I want everybody to know that there isn't anybody that in the agency that likes to fight the establishment more than a bunch of cops and game wardens.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll do what we need to do subversively at times or whatever, but we're doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes that nobody ever knows about.
Yeah.
You got to go into covert mode sometimes.
Exactly. Well, and if the game warden or, the biologist or whoever's out in the field that you're coming in contact with has got that gag order and you kind of suspect that that's the case, then, as the houndsman, we need to make it a mission to make a further up the chain, get to the commissioner, get the commissioner's ear. The commission can get a gag order. They're appointed by the governor, and every state's
I mentioned that.
But commissioners are appointed by the governor. Now they can be unappointed, obviously, but they're appointed by the governor. And you get their ear, and maybe they start talking, and you say, "Hey, listen, talk to game warden so and so, talk to biologist so and so. They'll tell you, what's going on, and this is what I'm saying." And and really get those higher ups in the agency, because that's at the end of the day, the guys on the ground, they probably have the same feelings we do. But it's getting it up that chain to the top to transmit that message to the politicians to fight for us. And if we can't get, a united front there, and we don't have people that are, you got to keep your emotions in check when you're talking to these kind of people. You got to be able to talk to them and not get fired up, not be cussing and hollering and throwing a temper tantrum, or anything like that. But, you go in and you talk to them polite, respectful, and you say, "This is what I want. This is why I want it. I've talked to all these different officers. They feel the same way. Feel free to reach out to them. But this is what we'd like you to support for us and to fight for us."
Yeah. I'll tell you an untapped resource that houndsmen have not used. The employee may have a gag order on them, but almost every state has a wildlife officers association that is not being gagged by the governor. They cannot put a gag on that. So instead of the officers who are on the clock being able to make a stand, then these hound organizations need to start looking at these officers organizations and helping them accomplish their mission and then they will help you accomplish yours, because they can come out, and say, "Hey, we support this initiative, or we oppose this initiative, or we support this, or we oppose this," as an association, and it insulates them from the bureaucrats. And anybody that thinks that if you think houndsmen and hunters hate bureaucracy, you ought to work for them.
Yeah.
That is a lot more direct line to it.
Yep, for sure.
So, what else we got?
I don't know, Chris. I think that probably covers it.
Yeah. Well,
Unless you got something.
No, I've talked enough. I get to talk every week. No, it's Travis, I appreciate it, man. It's we need more guys. I wish we could, in a perfect world, we'd take all our game wardens hunting. There'd be this great rainbows and unicorns relationship. Game laws are complicated, and even game wardens don't understand them. I've seen that. So, I think there's a lot of things. I think we've laid out a lot of things that we can do from both sides of this issue to help us with, because it's kind of like there's no greater friend and no worse enemy if you don't keep your eye on what's important here.
Yep, and I think everybody needs to take the initiative, no matter if you're the houndsman or the game warden. You need to take the initiative.
100%.
Don't sit around waiting for your houndsman to come contact you. If you're a game warden, don't wait for the game wardens to come contact you if you're the houndsman.
Guarantee you that the best place to get to know a game warden is not on the side of the road at 2:00 in the morning when you're putting hounds back in the box or wherever. That's not the that's not the premier time. Yeah. It's like my representative told me one time, it's not near as important for you to know my name as it is for me to know your name. And so there's a sense of freedom when you can, you're not ducking behind the Captain Crunch at Walmart when you see the game warden coming.
Right.
When you can look him in the eye and say, "Hey, what's going on today, man? Hey, how you been catching any lions?" There's a really comfortable feeling about that.
Yes, sir.
All right, Travis, man, I appreciate you. Appreciate you reaching out to me. And yeah, I'll get those links up on our social media. So if you haven't got anything else, I'll roll us out of here.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Hey, everybody. Appreciate you listening to this conversation. Check out Travis's videos. Travis Legler, Legler on Facebook. What's your handle on Instagram, Travis?
It's T-Man's Hunting.
T-Man's Hunting?
Yep.
There you go. T-Man's Hunting is all one word, or is there?
There's an underscore between T-Man's and Hunting.
Gotcha. So you'll be able to pick up a lot of cool stuff there, and we got to get together and talk dogs sometime. And
yes, sir.
Yeah, we'll get into
a mule
that.
with your name on it.
No kidding, man. I got to get it. I got to get another mule. I haven't had a mule. I haven't been on. I got on Shorty's mule last year out in Trinidad, and they wanted me to rope, and I'm like, I haven't even ridden in 15 years. I'm not good, and I've never roped. So yeah. I'm just a farmer in a cowboy hat, you know.
Yeah.
Yep. So, but we did ride mules a lot here back in the day, hunted off mules and different things. I need to post a picture of my old mule Pearl. But anyway, Travis, I appreciate it. Make sure that everybody checks out Travis's social media stuff and the Field and Stream articles and all those good things that Travis is out there doing for us, trying to put a good face on this. I hope you get that Good Morning America interview and can represent Houndsman. That'd be awesome. We need it right now.
Yes.
And make sure that you go to houndsmanxp.com and check out all of our merchandise over there. This is a shameless plug type, but it's not really shameless because we've got the Join or Die series over there, folks. We've got the sweatshirts and the hoodies and the t-shirts there. And we take all the profits from those items and we're sending them out to Colorado to fight Initiative 91. And we are doing a great job there. But we're not done. Don't get complacent on me. You guys have been awesome about going in there and buying that stuff. But I know y'all haven't bought them because I know how many we've sold. So I know you don't all have one. So help your fellow houndsmen out with going to houndsmanxp.com, shopping our merch. You can join us on Patreon. Everything that you do helps us keep this show on the air and have great guests like Travis on here and talk about things like this. So until next time, thanks for tuning in to the Houndsman XP podcast. This is Fair Chase.